I talked to Mr. White, and Mrs. White as well is gracious enough to be here with us today to help answer some questions. So it's a Q&A panel, but we'll try to stay away from the doctrinal, mind-bending kind of questions. We really want to focus on the history of GCA. I think this is good for us here, but I think it's biblical as well. It's interesting how often God calls his people to think back and remember what he's done. To look back and see that he did things, that he brought things together for them. So our format today, simply said, is going to be this. I have some questions to start with, because I do want to give you guys the opportunity to take questions, but I realize in the gym it's different, and you have to, crawl over people and get down the bleachers, and maybe you just have stage right here. So I wasn't sure how many, or if anybody would ask any live questions. So I've got a few that I've got to ask the Whites to start us out. Then after probably about 2 of my questions, I'll give an opportunity for anybody, this could be student, faculty, staff, anybody that would like to come up here and ask a live question from the mic, and we'll give an opportunity to do that. And if no one has a question, or no one wants to do that at that point in time, I'll just move on. But that'll sort of be the format. I'll ask a couple of questions, then give you guys the opportunity to ask something. We do want to keep it on topic as far as that goes. So again, we're going to try to stay away from doctrinal mind-benders and things like that. But if you have a question for Mr. and Mrs. White about the school, about what God's done in the school, that's what we're looking forward to today. Okay? All right, I think Dr. Bob wanted to say 1 or 2 things quickly here, and then I'll take it and we'll get going with questions.
Thanks, Mr. Mack. I just want to take a very brief minute, because the most important thing is what we're going to do in just a minute. But sometimes I don't know if we always have a sense of what's happened in history. Today, November 22nd, marks one of the biggest days, or at least one of the most notable days in our country's history. President Kennedy was assassinated 50 years ago today. In just a few hours will be the exact time, 12:30 in Dallas, Texas. And sometimes it's hard for us to connect with things in life when they're so far away from us. 50 years ago, I mean, of course, you read it in history books, but it's hard for you to imagine. But I want you to try to get a sense of 31 years ago. For me, 31 years ago, my wife and I have been married for 31 years. It's hard for me to remember Mr. and Mrs. White not being married. I know I was single at some point, I just don't remember it much. But that's how long ago they started this school. And I want you to try to get a sense of appreciation for what not that they have done, but the legacy that has been established in our school, and what God has done and how he's used them. There's only a handful of schools in our country, Christian schools in our country, that could say that they have a head of school and a wife that has made the kind of impact in Christian education, not just at Greenbrier, but in Christian education throughout our nation. And Dr. and Mrs. White are 2 of those people. Only a handful of schools can say that. So we are very blessed in our school, and I think it's really important that we sometimes have hearts filled with gratitude, not just come to school every day and say, okay, well, yeah, my life's kind of cushy and this is nice, but to have a real appreciation for what God did, so that now today when you walk into our school, it is what it is because of what he has done and how he has used them. So that's all I had to say.
I'd pray with yourself, so if you would pray with me, and we'll get to the questions today. Let's pray with me if you would. Father, we thank you again for another time we can gather here together, uniquely as Middle and High today, and faculty, staff, visitors, friends, and others that are here. We thank you that we can gather together here as the student body, but more importantly, as brothers and sisters in Christ. And I pray for our time today. I pray that the words that the Whites are able to share will be an encouragement to us of how you have worked in and through them, and how you're still working, and how you've seen fit to use our school. We pray for the time today. We pray to be useful and helpful today. We commit it to you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I'm going to start with a couple of, as I said, sort of predetermined questions. So if you guys out there listen up, obviously start thinking of yours, I'm going to give you a chance in a couple of minutes. Okay, the first question I'm going to direct to Mr. and Mrs. White, and you guys can decide who speaks first or second, how you want to handle this. It's just in a few minutes or less, I know it's going to be tough, but in a few minutes or less, can you sort of give us an explanation of how God directed you guys to begin Greenbrier Christian Academy?
Always go ladies. I always do ladies first. We've been married 45 years, and I learned that after about the first 6 minutes after being married. So you learn to do that. When Carol and I were at school, when we graduated, we ended up going to Greenbrier Christian Academy up at Liberty now. And we started there as teachers, and I was the camp director for Treasure Island there at the youth camp. And we moved from there over to Roanoke, and from Roanoke to Raleigh, from Raleigh to Dallas, and from Dallas back home. When we came back here because my mother was ill, she had cancer. And we knew that unless God did a miracle, she wasn't going to survive. So we came back here for that reason. And I came back and worked as a consultant for a year with a company. And one of the things that happened is I went to a school that was out in Suffolk and was doing some consulting work for them. And after a few months, they asked me if I would become their interim head of school. And I agreed to do that, not knowing that it was going to end up as a permanent position. So I spent 2.5 years there. And then we ended up, when Greenbrier started, we ended up leaving there. And we had several folks who were friends of ours who had students that were in our children's age group ask us about the fact of praying about an independent Christian school. There were no independent Christian schools in Virginia at the time that Greenbrier started. We were the first. And so we prayed and asked God for His direction. And we did a couple of things. We held a meeting where the Lowe's building is on Battlefield Boulevard today is where the school started. Right out in their parking lot, there used to be a building there that Bible Broadcasting Network owned. We started at that site, and the way this started is we started by putting a little announcement in the Clipper, which was brand new in 1983, and we asked parents if they were interested in an independent Christian school to come and meet with us on one evening. And the first meeting we had about 135, 140 people show up, which really surprised me, because there were 39 Christian schools in Tyler at that time. We held a second meeting 2 weeks later, and we had another 130 parents, different parents, show up. And so it was pretty evident that there was a need. And so Carol and I, along with several other families, that formed a board of directors and started again praying about God opening the school here. And to show you how quickly this happened, that was in June of '83. So we had June, July, and August. And we held those 2 meetings in June. We started enrolling in July. And September 1, we opened with 202 students, which was an absolute miracle. It was a miracle not only that it opened, but it was a miracle that it all got done before we started. And so that's kind of the beginning of Greenbrier Christian Academy, of how it started. And God's leading us. We had no concept. We had no concept of what God was going to do and why He was going to do that. We just knew that He was really leading us down that path at that point. So, it was one.
An independent Christian school is not affiliated with any one particular church, because the board decided that it would be Baptistic in doctrine, and that our doctrine would be biblical, and that would be our focus, but we weren't connected or supported by any one individual church.
And the reason why we did that is we wanted students from any churches that believe the Bible. We wanted them to be able to attend Greenbrier Christian Academy, and this was going to be a different venue for them. This wasn't their youth group at church. It wasn't their church. It was their school. And so that was kind of the design of that.
Okay, good. All right, next question I had, and after this I'll give an opportunity for some of you guys to ask. Next question I had actually comes from a real student I'm not going to identify. But I was asked specifically, what does Mr. White do all day? So I actually do, and I really don't think it was in a negative way, okay? But I'd like to actually direct it to both Mr. and Mrs. White. I don't know if there is a typical day, but what kind of things do you do in the hidden office, behind the door, behind the scenes? And to Mrs. White, I don't know if, again, if there is a typical day, what kind of things typically are associated with your day?
My day is less typical, I think. Because I'm subbing right now for Mrs. Steele while her husband is down. I've taught for 38 years and retired 3 years ago, and I love being retired because now I can do all the fun things. And I'm titled the fun director for the faculty. And so I can plan the parties and things like that. My typical day right now is to teach between 10:30 and 2:30. And then when there are home duties and church duties and things that you do normally, my job is to support my husband. And we love the school. This is our home. Teachers are our family. Students are our love and our burden. And our grandchildren. This is home for us.
How many of you think I have anything to do at all? Let me see your hand. I mean, a typical day for me, if there is such thing as a typical day, is that when I get here at school, usually I stop to get coffee. I usually come in, take my coffee, go to my office. That is usually my quiet time for the first few minutes of being able to at least open the scripture up, read some, and let God try to speak to my heart over all the things that need to be done. It is also a time that for years, one of the things I've tried to do is I've tried to pray for our families and for you as students by name. And so I usually get a listing of all of you by class, and so that I can pick 3 or 4 seniors or 3 or 4 juniors or whatever to pray for you individually. And so that usually is one of the things that I do, whether it's first thing in the morning or sometime during the day. The rest of my time I usually spend by immediately beginning to talk to divisional leaders like the principals, the head of facilities, the head of business department, Ms. Castello, and monitor what's going on in the different divisions that way. And of course, you can anticipate that in each of those divisions there are different things going on. On Tuesdays, we have staff meetings, and so each of those divisional folks come in and present issues or things that are upcoming in their division. We talk about, okay, we've got a problem because the elementary is using the gym for chapel this time, and so high school has to move their chapel, that type of thing. That's one of the things. Probably one of the biggest things that I do as far as the school is concerned is I'm the direct connection back to the school board. I present back to the school board what the needs of the school are or what issues we're having. So lots of times I'm preparing emails and reports to go back to them. The biggest thing I do for the school is that I kind of set the vision for where Greenbrier is going to go. In other words, what we're going to try, what we're going to do, those ideas. And lots of times that takes a lot of responsibility. Like yesterday, I was out of the building for about 4 hours helping to plan for our Hampton Roads Association meeting, which will be held at our school. And so those type of things are some things I'm doing today. Naturally, I still get to deal with teachers on individual things that are going on in their lives and so forth. Not as much involved in the day-by-day what's going on in your hallways, although I hear about it, but not as much that as I used to. I also represent the southeastern region of the United States for ACSI as a national board member, and so some of my time is spent sometimes working on the projects that they give to me. But all contracts, all things financial, all the things that have legal, all of those things have to come across my desk to be assigned as the registered agent for Greenbrier Christian Academy and the legal representative for Greenbrier Christian Academy.
Okay, very good. All right, I'd like to try to take a couple of questions from you guys out here. This is how I like to do it because I don't know if anybody, but I really would not have to stampede as well. Okay, so let's do this. Let's let the juniors and seniors have the first opportunity. So is that maybe, let's say maybe 2 people from the junior and senior class that want to come down and ask a question? If not, I'm going to move on to some more fun. Anyone junior and senior come down, ask a question?
You can ask any question you want to. And if I don't want to answer, I'll tell you I'm not going to answer, okay?
Right, anyone? All right, freshman, sophomore. Is there a freshman or sophomore that would like to come down and ask a question? Anyone? You want to? Go ahead. Come right down to the mic over here.
My question, when Greenbrier first started, were you skeptical that, were were you skeptical that like things wouldn't work out, or like what was going through your mind before that happened and after it happened?
I don't think I was skeptical at all because of the fact of the way God had organized those meetings with parents that I had no idea who they were. And it was evident that God had something happening. I think probably if there was anything that we were unsure about is we had no concept that Greenbrier would grow to the size that it grew to. Many of you sitting in this room probably don't even know this, but at one time we were operating 3 campuses. One in Virginia Beach, one in Suffolk, one here. And most of you probably were not here during those times. So we had no concept of what God was going to do. And when it started happening, it was happening so quickly that we knew without a shadow of a doubt it was not anything that we were doing, because God was supplying the needs, supplying the finances, doing all those things that we were just incapable of doing. So I wasn't skeptical. Was I afraid? Scared to death. Scared to death, really. That way.
We kept our prayer life intact. We stayed on our knees because it was nothing that we could do, and we couldn't foresee the difficulties, or it could just happen, and it moved so quickly, there wasn't time to be skeptical.
All right, thanks. Is there one more question to talk for? Or would you like to ask a question? Did the freshman sophomore question or not? Okay, or is there one more? Okay, and after this I'll ask a couple more, and then we're going to come to middle school in a couple minutes. Go ahead, come now, and you can ask your question.
How did you choose the mascot and colors, or were there other options?
I wanted to be kangaroos.
It has a funny story to it. None of you would remember this at all, but back when the school started in 1983, there was an athletic shoe that came out called the Roos. Had a big kangaroo on the sole, and it was because it was supposed to be such a nice jumping school. And so Mrs. White really took off with it. She thought we should be the Kangaroos. I really struggled with kangaroos. So we decided we would put a contest out to the students. So we put a contest out to the students, and we said, we'd like you to suggest what you'd like as a mascot and your school colors. And of course, you can imagine we had all kinds of names, and the typical Christian school names, the Crusaders, the Patriots, just whatever, the Crossbearers, you name it, it was there. And the winning combination came, and this was kind of funny because it was selected one at a time. They came across, and a group of teachers looked at these. And the one that came across was blue and orange, and we had one that was, and the blues were different. It was like navy blue and burnt orange, and then we had light blue and kind of a tangerine color, and then we had blue and orange that we have today. And the name Gators, and it was because of the Florida Gators. And that selection came from my daughter. I didn't know it at the time, but Wendy had submitted. Wendy was, where is Wendy? Where are you? Is she in here? Where are you, Wendy? What were you, 7th grade? 8th grade. And so she submitted that, and the teacher selected that name, Gators. And to add to that story, we had a board member who sold all the professional uniforms to the NFL teams and the college teams. And so he contacted the University of Florida, and the University of Florida okayed us to use the Florida Gator. All we had to do was turn it the opposite direction. So you probably don't even notice this, but our gator head is turned one direction, and their gator head is turned the other direction. Well, for many years, every year, the Gator football team in Florida sent us the emblems for our helmets. We put our helmets at decals. And so that lasted for a lot of years. And so it's kind of developed there. We did change colors. We got a third color when we used blue and white and orange rather than just blue and orange. But that's kind of been our colors almost from the first year forward. So that's how it happened.
Okay, thanks. All right, fast forward. All right, fast forward the audience. How many of you would have rather been the Kangaroos? I have to know. 5 of you. Okay, good. No, I think with students on this one, it is a good call. Okay, I've got 1 or 2 more questions I'll ask, and then after that, I'll give the middle schoolers an opportunity to come down here. Okay? one or two more questions for me, and as I said, middle schoolers, you guys are up next to have an opportunity to ask. Okay, this one maybe should kind of a fashion one to answer, but I'm kind of curious as to some of the different roles or jobs that you've had through the years at Greenbrier, not just titles, but some of the different things that you've had to do hands-on, sort of to both of you.
I've taught English, I've taught elementary Spanish, I've taught at the Step Center, I've cleaned bathrooms, I've swept floors, worked in the lunchroom, helped lay carpet, painted walls. I think that should be it.
Mine has been along some of those same lines. When Greenbrier started, of course, all of us, not just Carolina, but everybody who was affiliated with Greenbrier, everybody was involved. And unlike a lot of schools where they just have somebody come in and build a building, we built our own buildings in most cases. And Mr. Whitlow, who some of you see here in the hallways, is our facilities director. All the air conditioners in this building were replaced by him with a crane and a couple of guys, which is about, today, I think there's 42 or 48 units on the roof. We replaced all the bar joists, which is the steel that goes across the hallway. When you walk down the hallway, there's bar joists across there to support the second level. And all of this level up here, up on the second level, we put all of those bar joists in and put the wood down up there for that. Probably throughout the years, I think we've laid carpet, painted, done all those things. Mr. Bailey and I, this is an interesting fact, Mr. Bailey and I put the football field in with 2 tractors with drag boxes on the back. And that's how the football field got put in out there, was on those 2 tractors. I taught in the classroom for the first 10 or 12 years of the school, as well as served as the principal of the school. And then, let's see, we had an incident earlier, which I'll say that, but I ended up coaching the girls basketball program. I was a coach for 12 years out in Texas, and so I ended up coaching the girls for 2 years, which was a really interesting experience. And I coached them for 2 years, and then just a little bit of those things of coaching, teaching, principal, that type of thing. At one time we didn't have an AD, so I had to do all the scheduling for all the ball games and driven the bus for ages, so that kind of stuff.
Okay, good. All right, one more question for me, and we're going to take some more from the students. If you can, maybe pick one, maybe 2 shorter stories of ways that God has really specifically provided financially for the school, whether that might be sort of an unexpected gift, or whether that might be something tangible. But could you share maybe 1 or 2 ways that God has provided something really amazing for the school?
Probably the one that I remember the most is when we were planning for the school, we had to have some modular buildings, and we had no money, but the base was, the naval base was selling modular buildings. So my husband and a couple of other people went to the meeting and bid on those buildings and got them with no money. And so they had 30 days to come up with thousands of dollars. So again, we're on our knees, and in 30 days, the Lord provided all of that money to pay for those modular buildings. And the school's never been in debt.
It was interesting, when we got those modular buildings, we were over on the Bible Broadcasting Network site, and it was really funny because the PE program it was an old nursery building that sold plants and stuff. So when the PE classes dressed, they dressed in 2 restrooms inside. We used to laugh because you never knew whose uniform you were going to put on because it was so crowded in the restroom. But we went outside and they used, like, where they hung their plants, they used that as pull-up bars and so forth. And we were just really short of locker room space. And so we went over to the base, the Saudi Arabian Navy, which sounds kind of funny in itself. They were here training, so they had bought like 14 of these modulars and put them in place. And we went into all these modulars, and there was one of the modulars was a complete locker room. Lockers, showers, and I thought, boy, we need that so bad. So we picked out 3 monitors. I'll never forget it. It was 7, 12, and 14. Those were the 3 numbers on those monitors. So we bid on those 3, and so we came back, and after we got back, we realized, okay, if we get these things, we got to come up with some money. So in 24 hours, they sent us a registered notice and said, you have been awarded the following modulars, 7, 12, and 15. And 12 was the locker room that we needed so bad. And so we were able, in 30 days, people started hearing about the fact that we got them, and we just had people who just gave money to pay for them. And when the 30 days were up, we paid for all 3 monitors in cash, exactly what we needed. I mean, it wasn't over and it wasn't under, it was almost to the dollar of what we needed that way, so God provided that way. Probably one of the neatest times that I remember provision for the school was when we first started to build here, this property review, this used to be a farm, and this farm extended all the way down to where Greenbrier High School is, the old Greenbrier High School. Extended all the way out as far as the water, at the intercoastal waterway, all the way over to Greenbrier Mall, up to where the shopping center is. All of this was one big farm. The White House next door that we now own, the big old White House that the Russians are living in, that was the family that owned the farm. That was the Hall family. And so all of this was just farmland. When we started, I went to Mr. Hall and asked him about selling this property, and everyone said, he's not going to sell any property, he just won't do it. And so I met him right over here on this road that cuts over the 7-Eleven. There's a gun shop over there now. You see their mailbox with a gun on it. That used to be the area where they packed all of their vegetables that were grown in the fields. And one of the vegetables they grew was collards. And so the day I went over to see him, he was shoving collards into ice in baskets and loading them on a truck. And so the whole time I'm talking to him, he's working. And I explained to him, we had chosen the name Greenbrier because of this area of law, and he just never really even looked at me. He just listened. So I kind of ran out of words at that point, and he said, well, I'll think about it. And I got in my car, and I thought that was a waste of time. Well, about 2 to 3 weeks went by, and he called me one day, and he said, Mr. White, can you come back to see me? And I said, yes, sir. And I came back, and on top of his old station wagon, he had a set of prints of all of this farm, and he had a red line marked on this like a rectangle, and he said, I'll tell you that 5 acres, $25,000 an acre, which was unheard of in that day. Land was selling for about $3,000 an acre out here. He said, I want $25,000 an acre. I don't want a digger. I don't want a tax receipt. That's what I want, $125,000. I was a lot younger and not real smart. And I said, yes, sir. And he looked at me and he said, is your word any good? And I said, yes, sir. And he shook my hand and he said, I'll see you at the attorney's office in 60 days. And I got back in my car and I thought, what have I just done? This is not a module that costs $5,000 to $6,000. This is $125,000. And it was really funny how God did this. The first thing that happened that let us know that this is what we were supposed to do is we got a call in the office. Mrs. Diggs, who's the elementary secretary, Mrs. Diggs used to be my secretary when the school first started. She's worked with me for 34 years. And she got this call, and she was in my office, which was just a cubicle really at the radio station. She said, there's a gentleman on the phone who said he wants to help the school. And so I picked it up, and he said, I'm so-and-so. I think his first name was Rob, if I remember right. I still don't know his last name. And he said, Mr. White, he said, I've heard about Greenbrier Christian Academy and what you're trying to do. He said, my wife and I do not have children, and we cannot have children. But we would like to do something to help the school get started. And I said, well, I'm very appreciative of that. And I said, what would you like to do? He said, I'll just drop something by next week. He said, I work at the shipyard and I'll drop something by. And he said, we don't want any recognition for it. We just want to give you something. I said, okay. I didn't know him. I had no idea who he was. And nobody else knew. That was the strange part of it. When we, after the fact, everybody asked him. The following week, Pat came in and she said, here's an envelope that got dropped by the desk, and I opened it up and it was a check for $10,000 from somebody that I didn't know. He didn't know me. He just wanted help. over that period of time, on the day that we walked into the office on this property, we had received $126,400, I believe it was. And the property was $125,000, and the attorney's fee was the other. And we paid for it in cash. And that day that we got the property, Mr. Hall looked at me and he said, I'll option you another 5 acres behind that. And we got that option. And then later on, we bought that option, and then we bought another 5. And eventually, we ended up to where today we have 30, right at 30, almost 31 acres of property. So God's provision in that was just absolutely miraculous, because we were such a young school that nobody really knew it, so it wasn't like going out and raising money. But parents and people and grandparents just kept bringing checks in until we paid for all of it. So that was just another way of us knowing that God wanted to do that.
All right, good. Okay, let's give the middle schoolers an opportunity to ask. So if there's maybe 2 or 3 middle schoolers, if you want to go ahead and come down. I don't really want to say anything. If 2 or 3, if you can come down here, that would be great. Okay, looks like we have enough. All right, very good. We'll go with 4. How's that? 4 or 5. All right. Okay, that's enough. All right. All right, let's let you guys ask questions here, and then we'll move on to that. Go ahead, please.
Did you ever consider changing the location of Greenbrier?
No, we worked so hard to get to this location, we never changed the location of Greenbrier. We did expand to the Suffolk campus at one time, and Virginia Beach campus. This location, after we bought the property, this was always designed to be the final location for Greenbrier.
Has this school changed your walk in faith?
Oh, what a great question. Did you hear his question? He said, has the school changed our walk in faith? Is what you want to answer that?
Every day, every day, even to this point. Things aren't, I'm reading a book on interventions, or divine interventions. They're not interruptions, they're interventions. And God shows his character every day through the school. And we never lack anything to talk about, that's for sure.
He's really strengthened our faith over the years, because each time that he answers prayers, and each time he does that, strengthens us. For me and Carol, it's always a blessing to go in a place and an alumni comes up, or somebody's graduated. Or it's funny, I went to Starbucks a couple weeks ago. There was a little girl handing me a coffee, and she said, "Are you Mr. White?" And I said, "Yes." And I thought, "Oh no, I probably put her out of school or something." She said, "I thought you were." And I said, "Why?" She said, "I used to go to Greenbrier. I went to Greenbrier when I was in 5th and 6th grade." And she said, "My folks took me out." And she said, "I've been regretful ever since I didn't get to finish there." And then the girl standing next to her said, "Yeah, and you need to stay too." And I'm like, "Why?" And she said, "Because people like her need to be straight. She needs to be taken care of." And this little conversation occurred, and I drove away my coffee, and I thought, what was that all about? So it does strengthen your faith as you go through, and you meet people and you talk to people that way. Yeah.
If you hadn't started in school, where do you think you would be in life?
Well, I have no question. If we hadn't started Greenbrier, this is not what God had given us to do. He would have given us something else, and we probably would be somewhere else teaching, doing administration. We would be in Christian schoolwork, because that was our commitment, that we would stay in Christian schoolwork.
In your house, who's the better cook?
In my house, there is one cook.
Do you like pancakes?
I love pancakes.
He makes an excellent omelet.
What gave you the idea for the Early Childhood Center?
The Early Childhood Center started out of need. After we had been, the school had been here, it was K-5 through 12, and then people kept asking for younger grades, and we added 4-year-old, and then eventually we just went ahead and opened the preschool, which now administers to 2.5 and up. So that's how I got started.
If I could interject real quick, for the middle school, I have 3 questions, right? We're gonna cut the line here, okay? So if you're not, you can come down, but the rest of you guys stay in your seats for now, okay? All right, go ahead, please.
Has there ever been a code yellow in the school? Like a real code yellow?
Well, it depends on what you're calling a code yellow. We have different codes that we use throughout the school for security reasons. And we've had many of those different codes at different times that you guys here in school probably don't even know what's going on at that point.
Is there anything else my mom did at this school that I should know about?
She fainted one day when she had to give a speech in speech class.
I can't tell you anymore because she works for me.
Is there a reason why there's a bathroom in middle school?
Is there a reason why there's no bathroom in middle school floor? Yes, there is. Well, I know what the need is in middle school. When we built that building, which was the Early Ed Center, and upstairs we decided to build classrooms. Originally, it wasn't just going to be a middle school building, it was just going to be additional classrooms. When we decided to change it to the middle school building, we went back to the city, and what had happened is that the original lines that were run for the building, they were at the capacity of what they would let us do. So to run new lines would have meant to tear through the whole front of the high school building, through all the parking lot and out to the city and the highway. So it was decided it was easier for y'all to come down the steps than it was to do now. Okay?
Did you ever consider playing in a lacrosse program?
How many of you like lacrosse? You do? We have talked about the fact of field hockey and lacrosse and so forth. The reason we haven't done that is because as the size of our school, it's very difficult to offer all of those sports and be good at any of them. And so what we try to do is choose sports we think we can be competitive in. Maybe in the future, if the school continues to grow, once the economy we hope turns around and the school grows, yeah, those are areas we'd love to get into. We'd love to have tennis courts. We'd love to do some of that.
Have you ever owned more than one school at a time?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, so that all of you will know this, we do not own the school, okay? Our school is a nonprofit corporation, which means that it's an entity of itself. When we're gone, somebody else will fill our role and the school continues to operate, but no one owns the school. So, no, I haven't owned any other schools.
When someone asked him one time, who owns the school? He said, God.
And they looked at me like, the man's crazy.
How did you get the idea for senior trip and junior senior?
Well, there's always been a junior senior that goes on, and we switched to junior senior back several years to either a 2-day event or an all-night event, and that changed. We've always had a senior trip. Now, the senior trip, for those of you who are seniors, the senior trip used to be the day after graduation. We always went to Disney for 10 days. That was our senior trip. And it was attended by everybody in the class. And somebody asked me, how many times I've been to Disney? We're getting ready to go with the choir. We've been to Disney, I think, 38 times. So, I can just about take you on a tour. That's all.
What is like your funniest experience you guys had?
You mean here at Greenbrier?
We were putting carpet in the front hall, and before they could lay the carpet, we had to go in and sweep the dust off of the carpet. So one afternoon, it was either a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, we decided to come over and sweep out a couple of the classrooms so that we could get the process moving. And there was a mouse in there. And so it ran into, they had rolls of carpet sitting there, and he ran into the roll of carpet. So my smart husband said, if you will pick up that roll, the end of it, and then I'll sweep it out when he runs out the other end. I said, no problem. Well, when I touched the roll of carpet, that mouse came up and started going up my slacks. And my sweet husband, who is my protector, and stood there and laughed. So I was very angry with him, and in a Christ-like manner, I said, I will see you at home, and I drove home. And he
left me here.
He had no car.
You just have no idea how it looked to see Mrs. White dancing in that classroom, trying to catch that mouse. So, my funniest event at the school was not funny at the time it happened, but it was really funny later on, and that was that the school that we just played a couple of weeks ago, Shingatig, their mascot is ponies, wild ponies over there, you know. And so we were having homecoming that year, and I came out and every class did a float. And there was this gorgeous float with this huge horse on it. Senior float, and I was so impressed, I thought, that is absolutely wonderful. So we had homecoming that night, and they won. They won the float contest. So I came back on Monday, and when I got out here, the horse was chained up to the back fence back here. And I thought, okay, they just haven't gotten the horse on yet. So a day or two went by, and the horse was still here, and it was really quiet around here. Nobody said anything about the horse. So one of the parents who lives out in Carolina stopped in the front office and said, what are you going to do about the horse back there? And I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know float the other, I don't know. I said, but you're welcome to take it. She had a horse on. I said, you're welcome to take it. They wanted it. They just got it back there. So she loaded it up in a van, and she starts out. And they stopped her somewhere down in Carolina. The patrol stopped her to arrest her because this horse had been removed from the top of Acredale Salary on Indian River Road. Well, when she called me, I said, I didn't know that. And then it hit me. Somebody took that horse and put it on that float. That's why it was so quiet in school. Come to find out, two of our guys, seniors, had climbed up on top of the Acredale Salary with a hacksaw, cut the horse off at the feet, shoved it off the building, put it in their dad's truck, and brought it over here to school to be put on the float. Now, what was really funny about this is that this is an iconic mark in the community, that horse on top of the building. And so it was all over the news. And I'm like, we're dead. It's going to come out in the news that the Greenbrier Christian Academy student stole this valuable, iconic emblem. So I did a little research, and I finally narrowed it down, and I called the boys in, and I said, did you do that? Yes, sir. Why would you do that? We needed a horse for our float. I said, it's not your horse. We were going to take it back, but you gave it away. I said, we have to go make this right. So I got in my car, we drove up to Acredale Salary, and I went in, and I said, I need to see the owner. And the lady said, for what? I said, don't ask me, just get the owner and let me talk to him. So we go back there, and the owner was really upset. I mean, it was, and I told you the boys admitted what they did, and he said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, if you replace the horse on the roof with a new horse, your expense. He said, I won't press charges. And he looked at me and said, Mr. White, if they will do that, I will not mention the fact that they're Greenbrier Christian Academy students. I said, thank you very much. And so the parents replaced the horse, and they paid for it. It was about $2,500. But the funny part of the story is, of course, those who didn't know me, used to, I was furious with them for what they did. It wasn't funny to me at that point. But after it was all over, I was fine. This was back in football season, okay? Graduation occurs that June. And as this young man was coming across the platform, as he shook my hand, he handed me a crystal horse. I still have it in my office. And I looked at him. Nobody out here that was watching us anymore were talking about it. And I said, You do not know how close I am to taking your diploma away right now. Do not ever mention this horse again. He said, yes, sir. And he left the horse. Years after that, I'm in church one Sunday morning, and this huge guy comes up to me, and he said, do you know who I am? He's a full beard, and I'm like, oh, not really. He said, you remember the horse? I said, yes, sir, it was a horse. He said, do you remember you paddled me? I actually paddled him over this. I gave him 5 licks. He said, you think you could paddle me today? I said, it was a 2x4. And that was kind of my humorous story because it went so long, but when he handed me that horse at night graduation, I was like ready to crown him at that point. So that was my funny event.
All right, and I know everyone here, but unfortunately, our bellers are out of time here today, so we're gonna wrap up here today. I think it'd be appropriate to thank the Whites for being here today. If you guys give a round of applause.